Okay, let's just picture this for a second. You're in the middle of a really heated argument, right? You've got that fire in your chest, you know exactly what you need to say, and then it happens. Your vision starts to get a little blurry, you feel that lump forming in your throat, your voice starts to crack, and boom, against your will, tears. And the thing is, you're not sad, you are furious.
And if this has ever happened to you, you know exactly what comes next. The person you're arguing with just looks at you, and you can see it in their eyes. They think you're weak. They might even say something like, "Why are you crying? It's not that big of a deal," which of course just pours gasoline on the fire. And right there, in that moment, it just feels like your own body has completely betrayed you. All that strength, all that righteous anger, it just short circuits, and you're left feeling small and totally misunderstood. But here's the thing. What if I told you that whole reaction, it's not weakness, not even close?
See, you're not crying because you lack capacity. You're crying because you have an excess of it. Think about it. While other people can stay cool because maybe they're only, 50% invested in the conversation, your whole system is firing at 150%. And any engine that runs that hot, well, it's going to overheat. Those tears, that's just your body's built-in cooling system kicking in, trying to stop you from having a complete meltdown.
All right, so let's really get into this. Because before we can even touch the biology here, we've got to break down the social labels that have been slapped on this whole experience. I bet for most of your life, there's one phrase you've probably heard more times than you can count.
Yeah, too much. Just two little words, but man, they can feel like a life sentence, can't they? It's this label that basically tells you, hey, you need to be smaller. You need to be less of who you actually are if you want to fit in.
And if words like too intense, or too emotional, or too sensitive, if they sound familiar, it's for a really good reason. It's because that's the only language people have for a biological trait they just don't understand. This isn't about you having a personality flaw. It's about other people not being able to handle your depth.
But let's shift gears, because this isn't just about what people say. There's a powerful biological truth under all of this. And evolutionary biology, it turns out, gives us a completely different and frankly way more accurate way of looking at it. And here's the scientific name for it: sensory processing sensitivity. Now, that sounds complicated, but all it means is that it's a biological trait. It's not a disorder. It just means your nervous system is literally wired differently, built to process all kinds of information, physical, emotional, you name it, way more deeply than most people.
And here's the really important part. You are not alone in this. Not by a long shot. You're actually part of a pretty vital 20% of the population. Evolutionary biologists have this great name for this group. They call you the vanguard. The other 80%? They're the dandelions. Super resilient, can pretty much thrive anywhere. Both groups are absolutely essential for our species to survive, but you're just operating on a completely different system.
So what does that actually feel like, being part of this 20%? Well, the best analogy I've heard is to think about it like screen resolution.
So the dandelions, that 80%, they're kind of experiencing the world in a solid 720p. It's totally functional, works great. But you, the vanguard, you are wired to see, hear, and feel the world in 8K. That means in any given moment, you're processing millions more pixels of information. We're talking emotional data, sensory input, tiny social cues. It's an unbelievably rich way to experience life, but man, is it taxing on the system.
And this is why sometimes the little things feel so huge. You're not just hearing what your friend says, you're picking up on the tiny hesitation in their voice. You don't just hear the refrigerator, you can actually feel the hum in your bones. It's why you might cry, not just when you're sad, but when you're furious or even just overwhelmed by a beautiful piece of music. You don't just notice the world, your body is actively metabolizing it. And that, as you can imagine, takes a colossal amount of energy.
Okay, so this brings us to the most important point of all. We have to completely flip the script on the goal here. For your whole life, people have probably told you to toughen up or don't be so sensitive. But that's like trying to run a Formula One race car on cheap regular gas. It's just never going to work. The answer isn't to downgrade your amazing system. The answer is to build the right support structure for it.
So let's just get one thing crystal clear right now. This is the first thing you have to unlearn. You are not fragile. A finely tuned scientific instrument is sensitive, right? But nobody would ever call it weak.
And this is the new truth you need to embrace. You are a high-performance system.
Seriously, your nervous system is this incredible piece of biological engineering. And just like any high-performance machine, it needs the right fuel, it needs regular maintenance, and it needs the right environment to really shine.
And this brings us to your role in all this. You are the vanguard of awareness. You're the person who senses things before anyone else does. You're the one who notices the subtle shift in a friendship or the unspoken tension in a room. You pick up on things that others completely miss. And listen, that's not a burden, that's a superpower.
So let's leave you with this. The old question was, what's wrong with me? We're throwing that question out. The new question is an engineering problem, is a design challenge. So how are you going to build the architecture your biology demands? What does your high-performance system actually need to thrive? Does it need more quiet, more downtime, deeper connections instead of more connections? Your biology isn't a flaw to be fixed. It's a powerful reality you get to design your life around.
Have you ever been there? You're in a really heated argument. You're full of this righteous anger, maybe even frustration, and then you feel it. Your eyes start to well up with tears. It is one of the most confusing and honestly frustrating experiences. So let's dive into this. Let's really explore the fascinating biology behind why we sometimes cry when we're angry. You know, for so many of us, this one phrase just hits right at the core. Too intense, too emotional, too sensitive. You've been told your entire life that you're too much, and maybe you even started to believe it. Maybe you've spent years just trying to turn down the volume on who you really are. But what if I told you that this isn't a flaw? What if that intensity, that emotion, what if it's not a bug in your personality, but actually a feature of your biology? We're going to reframe this whole thing. We're going to move away from this idea of weakness and start looking at it as a powerful, high-performance system. To do that, we have to start with the hardware. Because this isn't about your character, not really. This is about your nervous system and how it's wired to process the world around you. Okay, so think of it like this. Imagine most people experience the world in, say, 720p resolution. It's clear, it works, it's steady, but some of us, and maybe this is you, are wired to experience life in stunning 8K. You don't just hear a conversation. You pick up on that tiny hesitation in a friend's voice. You don't just sit in a room. You can actually feel the low hum of the refrigerator. You literally metabolize the world around you with so much more detail. And this 8K experience, well, it actually has a scientific name. It's called sensory processing sensitivity. And listen, this is not a disorder. It is a recognized evolutionary trait. It just means your brain is specifically designed to process information, both the physical stuff and the emotional stuff, on a much, much deeper level. And get this, you are not alone, not by a long shot. About 20% of the population, that's 1 in every 5 people, has this trait. So you're not some kind of outlier, you're part of this significant group that some researchers have even called the vanguard of awareness. Pretty cool, right? So how does this high-fidelity 8K nervous system lead to crying when you're just plain angry? Well, let's look at it like a system that's overheating. This right here, this is the key. Just think about a marathon runner for a second. When they're sprinting, their body heats up like crazy. And to stop a total system shutdown, what happens? They sweat. It's a biological cooling mechanism. Well, angry crying? It's the exact same thing. It's just emotional sweating. So here's the play-by-play. Step 1. You enter a high-stakes conflict. Your 8K system starts generating this massive amount of data and emotion, and pretty soon, it starts to overheat. So to stop you from completely short-circuiting, your brain hits the emergency eject button and activates a cooling system. And the visible side effect of that entire process? You guessed it. Tears. Okay, let's get into the mechanics just a little bit. To cool you down, your body kicks on the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest system. It releases this chemical called acetylcholine to slow down your racing heart. And one of the most fascinating side effects of this whole cool down process is the production of tears. All right, so we get what's happening now, but the bigger question is why? I mean, why would our bodies evolve what seems like a totally unhelpful response right in the middle of a fight? Well, the answer is that your body is acting like an ancient and sometimes, let's be honest, an overprotective bodyguard. See, your nervous system hasn't quite caught up to the 21st century. It's still running on software that was designed for, primal survival. So to your body, a really intense argument with your boss doesn't feel all that different from, say, facing down a predator. It perceives a threat, and it thinks you might not win. But here is where this gets truly incredible. Those tears, they are not just a passive side effect of your system cooling down. No way. They are an active defense mechanism. They are sending a secret and really powerful chemical message directly to your opponent. And that secret message is sent using something called pheromones. These are basically odorless chemicals our bodies produce to trigger a response in other people. You can't smell them, but the brain of the person you're arguing with, it can absolutely detect them. And this isn't just a theory, it's a fact. Research has shown that the pheromones in our tears have a direct, measurable impact. When an opponent is exposed to them, their testosterone levels literally drop, their aggression measurably goes down. Your body isn't surrendering, it is actively, chemically, de-escalating a fight that it thinks is getting dangerous. So let's totally reframe this. Your angry tears are not a white flag of surrender. They are a chemical blanket, a really sophisticated biological tool that's designed to lower the temperature of a conflict and make sure you survive what your body thinks is a life-threatening encounter. So understanding all of this, that's step 1. But step 2 is figuring out, okay, now what? How do you actually live with this knowledge? How do you turn what you once thought was a flaw into what might be your greatest feature? So what does this all mean for you? Well, the goal is no longer to toughen up or try to suppress your nature. That's like telling a high-performance race car to drive like a minivan. It just doesn't work. Instead, the goal is to build the support system, the architecture, and the maintenance routines that your high-performance biology actually needs to thrive. And that brings us to our final thought. You are not too much. You are a high-fidelity system, and you are equipped with a powerful, ancient survival mechanism. So the question isn't how to fix yourself. The real question is, now that you know you have a high-performance system, how are you going to honor your design?
Have you ever felt your emotions so intensely that your body just seems to take over? If that's you, then you are in exactly the right place. We're about to flip the script on those overwhelming moments and see them not as a source of shame, but as a sign of some serious, secret strength. Oof, does that one hit home? You're too intense, you're too emotional, you're just too sensitive. Maybe you're the person who cries when you're angry or frustrated or even just overwhelmed by something beautiful. And for your whole life maybe, you've probably been told that this is a flaw, something you need to get under control or just hide away. But here's a thought. What if that's all wrong? What if this intense physical reaction isn't a sign that you're weak, but that you're running a highly advanced, superpowered system? That's the big question we're going to tackle together. Okay, so first up, let's talk about that painful too much label. Where in the world does it even come from, and what does it actually mean to experience life with this level of intensity?
See, for you, reality isn't something you just passively watch. It's something you actively process. You metabolize it. You feel the tiny hesitation in a friend's voice. You hear that low, constant hum from the refrigerator that literally everyone else just tunes out. You're not just observing life. Your entire being is taking it in and breaking it down.
So let's dig into the biology behind all this. Because, this isn't just some personality quirk. Nope, it's actually baked right into your wiring. Let's call it your 8K nervous system.
The official scientific term for this is sensory processing sensitivity, and the key word there is evolutionary. This trait was designed for a reason, for a purpose. Your nervous system is just fundamentally built to absorb and chew on information way more deeply, way more thoroughly than the average person's. I love this analogy. Think of it like this. The majority of people are like dandelions. They're resilient, they're robust, they can pretty much thrive anywhere. Their nervous system, it's recording life in a perfectly fine 720p. But you're an orchid. Your nervous system records life in stunning, high-definition, crystal-clear 8K. You see and you feel everything with so much more detail, more color, and more depth. And get this, you are so not alone. This isn't some rare defect. It's a pretty significant part of the population. 20%, 1 in 5 people, are biologically designed to be this vanguard of awareness. You're like the canaries in the coal mine, the ones who notice the subtle shifts and the super important details that everybody else just walks right past. So that brings us right to the heart of this whole thing. If you have this high-definition nervous system, what happens when it just gets overloaded? Well, this is where we get to talk about a game-changing idea, emotional sweating. Let's just agree to stop using words like fragile or broken. Your sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's a high-performance system. Seriously, think of yourself as a finely tuned engine.
And because you are so all in, so deeply committed to the truth or to justice or to a relationship, that engine is going to run hot sometimes. It's not a bug, it's a natural result of high performance.
So here's exactly how your body's amazing protective system works. First, you engage with something that really matters, something high stakes. Your engine revs up and runs hot. You get physiologically overwhelmed. Then, your internal bodyguard kicks in. And this ancient reflex, the crying, the shaking, that sudden urge to just get out of there, that is not a breakdown. It's your cooling system, literally venting all that excess energy so you can keep going. It isn't sabotaging you, it's protecting you.
The initial reaction, the tears or the shaking, that's what you could call the first arrow. It's just a biological thing and it passes. The real pain, the real suffering, that comes from the second arrow. And that's the one we fire at ourselves. It's the arrow of shame, of judgment, of telling ourselves we're weak for having that reaction in the first place.
This right here, this is how you stop that second arrow dead in its tracks. I want you to adopt this as your new mantra, because when you do, you can completely reframe the experience. You're not breaking down. You're not losing control. You can just tell yourself, it's okay. My body is just cooling off the engine so I can keep going.
So let's make this shift permanent. It's really time to move away from seeing a defect in yourself and start recognizing the incredible, profound dignity that is built right into your biology.
Okay, I want you to really let these sink in. These are your new truths. Your sensitivity, it's a high-performance system. Your physical reaction, that's an ancient protective shield. Crying isn't a breakdown, it's emotional sweating. You are not fragile, you are all in. And there is immense dignity in being so alive that your very biology reacts to what you believe in.
Let that just wash over you for a second. What you have is not a flaw. It's a level of commitment, of pure engagement, that most of the world, the ones operating in 720p, are just too numb to ever really experience. Your capacity to feel this deeply, that is the source of your power.
So, I'll just leave you with this question. Now that you understand that your intensity is actually your strength, your superpower, your commitment, what are you going to do with it? How will you aim that high-performance system now that you know how to work with it instead of fighting against it?
Have you ever been told that your emotions are a liability? That all that intensity you feel is something you need to get under control, or maybe even hide? Well, today, we're going to flip that idea on its head. We're going to see it not just as a strength, but as your own personal superpower. And I'm going to give you the exact toolkit you need to start using it.
I mean, does this sound at all familiar? You're too intense, too emotional. Maybe you're the person who cries not just when you're sad, but when you're frustrated, angry, or even just listening to a beautiful song. It's a label that can make you feel kind of alone, right? But believe me, we're about to see it in a completely new light. So here's where we're headed. First, we're going to talk about that too much feeling. Then, we'll get into the incredible biology behind it, what I call your 8K nervous system. After that, we get practical with something called the cooling protocol, where you'll learn how to hack your body's reflexes. And finally, we'll talk about how to own your reaction with total confidence. Okay, let's just get one thing straight right off the bat. This feeling of being too much, it's not a character flaw. It's not something you need to go out and fix. It's just an experience, and it's a really common one for a certain kind of person.
You know what I'm talking about. That constant internal battle to just keep it together, to act less affected than you really are. And let me tell you, that effort to hide your natural response is absolutely exhausting, but it all comes from a huge misunderstanding of what's actually going on inside of you.
So what is going on? This is where it gets really, really cool. Evolutionary biology gives us a totally different way to look at this. Let's stop thinking about this as a personality thing and start thinking about it in terms of biology and hardware. There's a scientific term for this. It's called sensory processing sensitivity, or SPS. Now, this is not a disorder, it's just a biological trait. All it means is that your nervous system is literally wired to process information. We're talking physical stuff, social cues, your own emotions, on a much deeper, more detailed level than most people.
And I absolutely love this metaphor. Think about it like this. About 80% of people have a nervous system that's like a 720p television. It's robust, it's resilient, it sees the world just fine. But you're part of the 20%, the vanguard of awareness. You're working with a high-performance 8K system. You don't just see the world, you metabolize it. You feel every little shift in the room. This isn't a weakness, it's a high-performance machine.
And this just goes to show you are so far from being alone. 1 in every 5 people is wired exactly this way. You're part of this group that's basically designed by nature to be the canaries in the coal mine. You're the ones who notice the subtle things that everyone else just walks right past.
Okay, so if you've got a high-performance system, you can't just run it on the default settings, right? It needs a special kind of support system, and that's exactly what we're calling the cooling protocol. It's all about building the right framework that your unique biology needs to thrive.
Now, this protocol has 4 key steps, and they're designed to give you back that feeling of control, like, right away. We're going to start with 3 quick hacks to manage that physical reaction: the lookup hack, the math hack, and the water break. And then we'll get to the final and most important step: label and pivot.
All right, let's jump right into those first 3 science-backed techniques. These are all about intercepting that physical sobbing reflex before it even has a chance to take over.
Step 1 is seriously the easiest. The second you feel that sting in your eyes, just look straight up at the ceiling. It does 2 things at once. On a super simple level, gravity helps keep the tears from spilling out. But, more importantly, it makes your brain switch gears into visual processing mode, and that pulls energy away from the emotional part of your brain.
Now, if looking up isn't quite cutting it, it's time to bring in the math hack. Start doing some tricky subtraction in your head. A classic one is counting down from 100 by 7s. So, 100, 93, 86. It is neurologically impossible to feel an intense emotion and do logical math at the same time. You're basically forcing the logical part of your brain to grab the steering wheel.
And step 3, for when that emotional wave feels really, really big, is the water break. Just take a sip of water. The physical act of swallowing makes the muscles in your throat, the ones that tighten up and give you that lump in your throat feeling, it forces them to relax. It's like hitting a physiological reset button on the whole sobbing reflex.
So, those first 3 steps are your first line of defense. But what happens if a tear or 2 escapes anyway? Well, that brings us to the final and honestly the most powerful step of our cooling protocol: owning your reaction. And this isn't about suppressing anything, it's all about communication.
So picture it. You're in a meeting, maybe having a tough conversation, and despite trying your best, you feel a tear roll down your cheek. What's the gut reaction? For almost all of us, it's to apologize, isn't it? To say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm getting emotional."
We are going to short-circuit that instinct starting right now. You do not apologize. Apologizing makes it seem like your biological reaction is some kind of mistake. Instead, you're going to do something we call label and pivot.
Here it is. This is your script. Burn it into your brain. You look the person in the eye, you take a breath, and you say calmly, "These are tears of frustration, not sadness. I care deeply about this, so I'm having a physiological reaction. Please, let's continue."
You see the difference? It's huge. That's not an apology, it's an explanation. It's a calm, confident move where you take back control. You're telling them what's happening, you're framing it as a sign of your passion, and then you're steering them right back to the conversation. You're explaining how your high-performance system works.
So let's end on this thought. Please stop seeing your emotional intensity as some kind of weakness you should be ashamed of. It is the physical proof of your passion, of your empathy, of how you engage with the world in stunning 8K detail. Your tears are not proof that you're fragile. They're proof of your fire. What do you think would change if you really started to believe that?